Hi everybody, welcome to 5 Minute Ministries. Now before I get into the really controversial stuff about women, I wanted to talk about how God honored and used women throughout the Bible. I think it's very important to talk about the positive things because a lot of people will deem the Bible sexist and oppressive toward women, which is simply not true, and I'll talk about that as we go on with this series. But I wanted to talk about the things that God had done through women. He's done some amazing things just to show that he can use anybody. Now I want to talk about, first of all, how God used women to shame men in authority. And I'm thinking of the judge Deborah in the book of Judges. The men weren't doing what they were supposed to do, so God had to use Deborah to get these men to do what they were supposed to do. And even in the same book, God uses a woman named Jael to subdue a king with a tent peg. Something as simple as that. It doesn't seem like much, but God is still using women to do wonderful things and to get victories where men just aren't getting the job done for one reason or another. God also used a woman to help the nation of Israel when they had come out of Egypt and wandered in the desert for 40 years. He used a woman named Rahab to help Israel overcome the city of Jericho and start the conquest of Canaan. It was the act of that one woman that helped this nation to destroy Jericho. There are many, many examples throughout the Old Testament where women are used, like Abigail, who stopped her entire family from being destroyed by David before he was king, because David was offended at Abigail's husband when he scorned David and refused to help. But Abigail, being a wise woman, went out to appease David so she could rescue her household. And we can find other examples, but I wanted to focus especially on the New Testament, because way back in Genesis, God had said the seed of the woman would have the one who would conquer Satan. It doesn't through man, it's through woman that God himself would become a human and would defeat the power of Satan. Now that's a very honoring thing, and it should be. I mean, he chose a woman to carry his son. And not only that, throughout Jesus' life, if you read through Scripture, you will find that he hangs out with a lot of women, especially in a time period when they were really treated as second-class citizens. He approaches a woman, not only an outcast as a woman, but an outcast in Israel because she was a Samaritan. And he speaks to her with honor and grace and peace. And he has a discussion with her. How many times did he go to a friend's house and those friends were women? And think about the crucifixion. When Jesus was arrested, how many of the disciples were there when Jesus was arrested and crucified? There was only one. John was the only one of all the men who followed him. But all the women who followed him were there. And at the resurrection, who was there to see that Christ had risen from the dead? It was women. All of these women now immortalized in Scripture, spoken about forever, being taught in churches everywhere, being examples to other women. Now, God honors women in so many different ways, and if we look out through history without Scripture, we'll find even more that God had used if you just take the time to do the research. Now, the Bible is not oppressive and sexist. It honors and glorifies women just as much as it honors and glorifies men. God may use men more often, but he certainly uses women, and we remember these women, even if some of them aren't named. So take some time and go through and find these women, study them, understand who they are, and if they're women of faith, become more like them, and ultimately become more like Christ. This has been 5 Minute Ministries, and I'll see you next time.